If you look at Scotland from above, you can see an amazing feature. The country is crossed by an almost perfectly smooth line stretching from one coast to the other. At first glance, this may seem like an accident, but in fact, we have a giant geological fault that has existed for hundreds of millions of years. It is along this line that one of the most famous mysteries of the Earth is hidden, the legend of the Loch Ness Monster. Welcome to the history of the Great Glen Fault. Like other major faults in the world, it arose as a result of the movement of tectonic plates. To understand its origin, you need to mentally go back 430 million years ago, during a grandiose geological event called the Caledonian Orogeny. Orogeny is the process of mountain formation, and in that era the entire region looked completely different. There were three ancient continents here: Laurentia, Baltica, and Avalonia. Imagine huge pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle that are slowly moving across the surface of the Earth. Over the course of millions of years, they came closer and eventually collided. As a result, the edges of the continents crumpled and folded, like a sheet of paper that is bent from two sides. However, some scientists believe that there was more than just a collision. The continents began to slide sideways relative to each other. To imagine this, it is enough to connect the fingertips of both hands and start moving them back and forth. This movement is called a shift. Massive blocks of the Earth's crust do not move up and down, but sideways. Over time, the rocks on both sides of the fault continued to slowly shift, sometimes for kilometers. About 66 million years ago, during the period from the late Cretaceous to the early Tertiary, changes in the region intensified again. According to scientists, then the displacement reached about 100 for kilometers. Later, the ice ages began. Glaciers and rivers have discovered this natural fissure and deepened it, forming a chain of lakes stretching along the fault line. The modern look of Great Glen has been shaped as if in a giant geological blender. It was these processes that created the majestic mountains and deep valleys that today give the Scottish Highlands a unique look. But the history of the rift is not limited to Scotland alone. This ancient scar has a twin on the other side of the Atlantic. Scientists suggest that the Great Glen continued in North America, but millions of years ago, the integrity of the fault was disrupted. About 200 million years ago, a huge underwater mountain range began to form, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which pushed apart the continents and destroyed a single structure. Today, the North American fragment of the Great Glen is known as the Cat Fault or the Long Range Fault. It passes through the northwestern part of the Canadian island of Newfoundland and extends to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. In Scotland itself, the fault forms a valley about 100 kilometers long from Inverness in the northeast to Fort William. This valley is dotted with picturesque lakes, the most famous of which, of course, is Loch Ness. It has become famous thanks to the legends of a mysterious creature with a long neck that supposedly lurks in its dark waters. Despite decades of searches, from drones with thermal images to mini-submarines, no convincing evidence of the monster's existence has been found. Interestingly, the legend of Nessie itself may be related to geology. Some researchers believe that many observations of the monster are actually explained by gas emissions from the depths of the fault. The fact is that Great Glen is not a completely frozen structure. Over the past 150 years, moderate earthquakes of magnitude 3 to 4 have occurred in the region. With the slightest shifts in the fault, underground gas pockets can burst out. When the bubbles reach the surface, they create ripples, splashes, and waves that can easily be mistaken for the movement of a large underwater creature. In other words, the lake releases gas. The question remains, is the fault active these days? There is no definite answer. Some scientists are confident that the Great Glen is still a shear fault and slow processes are continuing in the depths of the Earth. This is indicated by the moderate earthquakes of recent centuries. Other experts believe that there is no convincing evidence of significant modern activity. For example, the Inverness earthquake in 1901, one of the strongest in Scottish history, most likely occurred not on the main fault, but on a secondary line. Thus, the question remains open. What all researchers agree on is the uniqueness of the fault itself. It's surprisingly direct, ancient, and truly profound. But Scotland is fraught with other geological mysteries. Fast forward to the northwest coast. On the Isle of Skye, a wide variety of dinosaurs lived here in the Middle Jurassic period, about 167 million years ago. This is especially valuable because fossils from that time are extremely rare. But there are whole layers of footprints on Skye. Once upon a time, on the muddy shores of a warm lagoon, dinosaurs gathered by the water, leaving paw prints. Initially, in the 1980s, these footprints were mistaken for the burrows of ancient fish. But in 2019, a graduate student at the University of Edinburgh proved that these are three-toed dinosaur footprints. In the course of field research, more than 130 individual prints were found. Scientists believe that they were left by megalosaurs, large predatory dinosaurs up to 6 meters long that stood at the top of the food chain. However, at the moment when they left the tracks, they probably weren't hunting, but were just wandering along the lagoon, resting and looking for water. These footprints are a unique window into the past, a rare opportunity to look into the daily life of the Jurassic period. What do you think about this story? Write in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any amazing new stories. See you.